So, can you state your name for the dictaphone?
I'm Tim Hartley, and I live in Llandaff, north of Cardiff.
Excellent. And can you tell me a bit of information about your first memories of going to see Cardiff City?
I think the first time I really remember watching Cardiff was in 1974. Brett Garland and his dad drove me in from Barry, and it was going to be a really big match because Man United had dropped down to Division 2, and it was a big game. And I remember just being overawed really by the scale, the sight of Ninian Park. It was a traditional old ground even then in the 1970s. So many people and so many young men really. That game will be remembered not because Man United won 1-0, I think it was a penalty, but because of all the violence that surrounded it. 1974 would have been, if you like, the peak of the hooligan problem, and Man United and Cardiff both had bad reputations. And I remember Brett's dad, Cyril, actually hurrying us across Sloper Road from the car park because he didn't want us to hang around because there was sort of sporadic fighting and the police were trying to do their best. And it was actually quite frightening as a young man, as a child really. What was I, a teenager? But there was something really vibrant. It was theatre, it was drama, on the pitch and off it for the wrong reasons. And I think I was hooked on what football was all about from that day really. When I was a lad, my school was a rugby playing school, and football was sort of frowned upon as almost as a sort of girls' game. And I think there was a lot of that in South Wales at the time. There was a great guy I played rugby with, Howell Evans from Tontig, and he wanted to play football in the morning and play for the school rugby in the afternoon. And the games teacher said, no, one man, one team. You only play one sport, and that will be rugby. And I think this was a problem across a lot of schools in Cardiff and the South Wales Valleys in those days. So I was really, even though I loved my visits to Ninian Park, I was brought up on rugby. And it wasn't until I came back to Cardiff in the late 1980s that I sort of picked up again with Cardiff City. And it was amazing just to sit on the old bob bank there. I went down with some friends from work, John and Adrian. And in those days, you know, we played with a lot of passion under a manager called Eddie May, but we weren't very good. And it was a real social thing. And the routine, in a sense, has lasted ever since. You come down from Canton, where we were living then, you have a couple of pints and you talk. In those days there was no internet and no mobile, so we weren't really picking up the teams to discuss before. But you'd sit there and you'd look over the pitch, and it was a real sort of, it was almost like a little club of our own that we'd go there. And, you know, you'd follow the team not just on a Saturday or on a Tuesday night, but you'd read the reviews in the paper on a Sunday. In those days I used to buy a programme almost religiously, and you'd see what the manager, Frankie Burrows, I remember, he'd always write the same thing at the very start. You know, we wish our visiting friends, whoever they were, all the best after today. So, you know, he wanted to beat them. And you'd read the team notes, and you talk about it in work. And you were actually quite sort of on a down. I wouldn't say you were depressed, but you were on a bit of a downer on a Monday morning if Cardiff hadn't won. So Cardiff has, you know, since then in my adult life has really played a really big part.
So you started going with your family, so you started going with your son at a young age.
I started going after that first Man United match with a couple of lads from Barry, Jojo Greedy from Sully, and as I say, we'd catch the train in when we were a little bit older, and there was a crowd of Barry boys there who were pretty loud on the train, pretty loud and a bit foul-mouthed, and there was that edge to it, you know. and I was wearing Oxford bags and a check shirt, you know, and it was a strange combination of the sort of the skinhead fashions with the Harrington jackets. I think I just missed the braces part of it and the Dr. Martens. And I'd moved into the more sort of the sort of trendy era when we had the kind of stacked shoes. And the football has always been a sort of fashion statement as well. There's a great saying that you know, the Cardiff City supporters moved to a different beat. They dressed differently. They listened to different music. In those days, it would have been a bit of ska and reggae, you know. And the whole ethos was that you were setting yourself apart. And even then, as an adult, people in work still, oh, you're going down to watch that hooligan lot on Saturday. And they just didn't get it. And after a while, I stopped explaining, because I thought, Cardiff, my friends, and the extended family that you met on away trips, you didn't care. This was my family. And if other people didn't understand, well, that's their loss, you know. And then when I started going with the boys again, we had some fantastic games down there. I took my dad, who was a die-hard rugby supporter, to see him playing Reading, and he couldn't get it, you know. He couldn't get it. He said, "What are they chanting to him?" I said, "Well, they're saying something about the referee. The referee's a what?" I said, "Well, look, Dad, I'll tell you later." He couldn't quite get his head round, you know, he'd been used to Cardiff Rugby Club and the polite applause and mixing with the other fans. He wasn't used to segregation and really passionate chanting. But that's what really got me going and has kept me a fan, is the passion behind it. Because it's not something you can pick up or put down. Yes, you can appreciate great play, and, you know, our first season in the Premiership last season, one of my abiding memories, you know, was seeing Wayne Rooney's corners. I'd never seen such power and such precision, even though I hated the fact that he was doing well against us. We drew with him at home, which was good stuff. But no, you know, it's a kind of a protected, you know, it's passion without hatred, and that's how it should be. I've been very lucky that I had a child, a son. My wife was a big football supporter, and we've always gone as a family to the football. I took Chester to his first match with Cardiff at the age of 6 weeks. He was in one of those carry cots, you know, you can sort of pick it up and stick it in the car, whatever. And I took him to the old Arms Park. That would have been late spring of 1994. He was 6 weeks old. Cardiff were playing Barry Town in the final of the Welsh Cup. We didn't win that game. He was absolutely appalling. And I remember licking my little finger and putting it in his mouth to keep him quiet, you know, because I was watching the game. Never mind that his screams couldn't be heard above the din of the North Stand at the Arms Park. And then I took him for his second game. It would have been the start of the next season, 94-95, up to Stockport County. And he was only a little bigger then. And we lost that game as well. Yeah, maybe he was a bad luck mascot. But I remember when we did score, I picked him up and I shook him in the air, you know, in celebration. I think the people of Stockport must have thought, who is this lunatic from Cardiff who is waving his son as if he was a teddy bear? When he was a little bit older then, he could walk down from Canton with us and down Sloper Road. And we ended up having season tickets in the lower family grandstand, as it was. And what was good about that was, because it was a family stand, there were children of his age there. And the social element of football is so important. He grew up with children, because we all met there. There was Ryan Greening from Barry, whose family named their dog Leggy after our famous left-back. And these friendships were not just on a Saturday afternoon. Chester would stay with Ryan Greening in Barry overnight. There was Matthew Jones from Aberdeen and his family in front of us. We used to go for parties up there in the sports centre in Aberdeen. So you had then the parents talking, the children playing, going to stay overnight, all through football. And you could see the children developing until sadly they reached the age of about 14, 15, 16. They say, look, you're a bit of an embarrassment to us now, Dad, Mum. I'm going to sit with the lads, you know, themselves. And that carried on when we were going to away trips with Cardiff City. And I remember the first time Chester went, he'd have been about 15, 16, on an away trip on his own. It was as if I'd lost something, I'd lost him. But they were good days. The football in those late 90s wasn't particularly good. But you could chat with your friends, because there were so few of us there were crowds sometimes only a couple of thousand. But I'll be honest with you, I look at the new stadium now, and even if it's got 27,000 people there, I wonder if my experiences in Ninian Park with those small crowds when we all sort of knew each other going away, I wonder if they're richer, they're deeper experiences. Did I enjoy myself more then than I do now when the team is having allegedly so much success? I don't know, maybe it's rose-tinted spectacles, but it's a passion which we've lived with. Christmases and birthdays, never a problem in our house. You go down there, it's the new strip at the start of the season. It's the dice with Cardiff City on them for the car. It's the posters, it's the necklaces with the tacky little engravings. We even had Cardiff City bed sheets, can you believe that, for him? And it's something which it leaves a mark. It's part of you day and night, and it's rather nice. Some people think that following football like this is somehow there's something obsessional about it, you know, as if you're a bit odd. And well, you know, it's like any other sport, I suppose, but you do get involved, and that sense of feeling part of a community which is way beyond and deeper than just watching football together, I think is really important. And the modern professional game, I think we've lost a bit of that. I remember going to the Christmas parties for the children, and we'd have it in Grange Albion Football Club, and my lad then playing Pass the Parcel musical chairs with Robbie Earnshaw and Danny Gabidon. And I wonder if the players in the modern age actually do that. These people were local boys. They were from Cwmbran, weren't they, in Caerphilly. And there are fewer local players because of the way the transfers go, and British football has plundered the European market and now the African market, looking for the best players. And yes, we've got much better players. But that kind of, I felt I was at the tail end of that close bond between the players and the supporters and the club, all of us being in this together. And the modern game is a bit different. But as I say, maybe I'm just getting old and looking at it a bit romantically.
Have you got any standout games that you've gone to?
So some games really do stand out in the memory, and not for the reasons you'd think. We went to Cambridge United, and I think this must have been in Division 3 or 2, which would have been the lower two divisions. And we got into a bit of trouble, and Cardiff City, would you believe it, were down to 8 men. 8 men in a professional game. I think if you go down to 7, you've got to abandon the game. But we held on for a 0-0 draw. And the celebration on the bus on the way back was as if we'd won the European Champions League. It was so great. There are low points as well. It was great. I went to Cardiff City's last European match against Standard Liège, and I think we took the lead, or we drew for about 20 seconds before they came back. But it was great to be travelling with 2,000 fans, you know, to a foreign country and feeling this is something. The other standout games would be the FA Cup win against Leeds United. We were in what would have been the third tier then, and Leeds United were at the top of the Premier League, and it was a very tense affair. And I remember we came under the grandstand as we came into the lower grandstand, and there was a buzz about the place that day. And as you walk up the aisle, from the darkness, which was the sort of the bowels of the grandstand, it opened up, and a bright light, and the place was packed, and there were flags and banners and shouting. I knew it was going to be a good day. And, you know, that was a real giant killing exercise. I think that was 2004. The other standout games would be, of course, our visits to Wembley for the FA Cup final and the League Cup final. And, you know, the other visit to Wembley, of course, is the disappointment of losing to Blackpool in the playoff final. But, as I say, some of the games are the lesser games that we've played. Great visits all over England, really. And what we tried to do as a family was to sort of make it an event. I remember going to see Exeter City, St George's Stadium, and after the game we'd go and see Exeter Cathedral to try and make it an educational visit, to sort of, you know, excuse the money we'd spent on all the travelling and that. And going up after we'd played at Newcastle and stopping at Durham and seeing the castle and the cathedral up there. So we'd go in the car together, and as a family we'd sing the chants and the songs. And there was a very rude one which went on about sheep worrying, and that's what we at Cardiff City as Welsh people were supposed to be. And we sang our own sanitised version in the car, my wife and I in the front, and Chester in the back. And he said, "Stop, stop, 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 stop." He said, it's not 1-0 to the Sheep Shadows, it's a gut, not a duh, it's a gut. And we were so embarrassed that he actually, without understanding it, he knew what the rude word was. And it was, we laugh at it now, but it was something that we did as a family, and that it really is a part of our relationship. And you know, I'd recommend it to anybody if you can get into, maybe it's rugby or hockey or cricket, but it really does bring people together, families and friends.
Would you say that it's football that you are passionate about, or Cardiff City?
I'm passionate about Cardiff City and about football. If I'm walking through Sophia Gardens or Lander Fields, I will stop and watch an amateur football game. You know, I follow Wales away, and I will go, and whenever I'm on holiday I'll try and get a football game in. I think it's a wonderful way of meeting people. It's an international language. I remember going when we were newly married to Paris with my wife, and speaking to an Algerian Frenchman in a bar. He had very little English and we had very little French, but what he did know was who he called Ivan Rush. Well, it was Ian Rush, the Welshman, when he heard that we were Welsh. As I say, it's an international language. And away from home, if you can talk about football, people will have something in common with you. I remember going to Bologna when Wales lost 4-0 in a qualifying game. And people there remembered the great Welshman, John Charles, even though, you know, he hadn't played in Italy for many, many years. So I love football, but I think Cardiff has got a particularly, it's a particularly good, or was a particularly good community club. People do feel this association with it, and that extends beyond the city of Cardiff to the South Wales valleys. And for them, of course, I joke with my friends from Pontypridd and from Merthyr that every game's an away game because they have to travel here. But they do in hordes. There are 2 buses that come from Maes Teg. You know, there are minibuses and train loads which come down from the valleys. And I think it really is a good sort of how can I put it, rallying point for the city of Cardiff. You know, never mind the economic impact. What it does is it gives a sort of social cohesion, and the club itself does some fantastic work in the community, taking football out there, using football as a medium to lever in education and skills training for young people, especially perhaps disaffected young people or people from black and minority ethnic communities. You know, if you can say, you'll do the training in the afternoon, but we're doing skills in the morning, and you know, you've got to sit in the classroom and you've got that discipline, and football could be such a great way of bringing people together. We've been very lucky. I've been involved with the Cardiff City Supporters Trust since its inception, and we've made a lot of efforts to give what we call taster sessions to people from different communities. So we'll get the club, who are very good with us on this, to provide 20 or 30 tickets and we'll take people from the Somali or the Bengali community into the club, people who have never been there before. We ask them before they go what they're expecting. We ask them afterwards what their impressions were. And in this way we're trying to show those people that Cardiff City is for them. It's part of the community. And, trying to push the club to say, look, we need to be more responsive and to reflect the community in which you're based a little bit more. So, I really think football's a tool for good, and I hope Cardiff City can really, be up the top there. It has been voted Family Club of the Year for 2 seasons, and it's so good that those ugly scenes which I remember from the 70s, 80s and 90s have disappeared. There is no trouble at Cardiff City now. It's a family club. In fact, some of my friends say it's lost a bit of its edge. The drama and passion which I loved at Minion Park, it's a bit subdued now, perhaps. But it's a different kind of football that we're seeing. It's a different kind of game. And I just don't think that my love for it has diminished over the years.
Excellent.
Is that it?
Yeah, okay. Brilliant. Thank you.